never thought a rainy night would rewrite my story until Keith knocked on my door. His perfect date plan was destroyed by the storm, but he brought me something far better. 2 stuffed bunnies, linked by tiny magnets, his quiet way of saying we belonged together. I peeked out from behind the door, my heart racing at the sight of him standing in the rain. In that damp, cozy doorway, our lifelong friendship started to shift into something new. His jacket was soaked at the shoulders. He'd stood in the rain just to bring me this gift. When my fingers brushed his cold knuckles, a flutter started in my chest that I couldn't ignore. My face burned as I stared at him. This was the first time I saw him as more than a friend. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my gaze. He was just as flustered as I was. I had no idea this rainy encounter would be the start of our greatest adventure. The pink bunny in my arms was damp, but it felt like the most precious gift I'd ever received. I handed him a fluffy towel, hoping to hide how flustered I really was. His cold fingers brushed mine again, and my heart skipped a beat. I clutched the pink bunny tightly, as if it could hold on to this new, strange feeling. As he turned to leave, I knew nothing would ever be the same between us. His figure faded into the rain, but the feeling he left behind stayed with me. I stood there long after he was gone, replaying every moment in my head. That rainy night marked the end of one story and the beginning of another. I had no clue where this new path would take us, but I couldn't wait to find out. Our story had only just begun, and I was ready to be the protagonist of every chapter. The rain ruined our fancy plans, but what came next blew my mind. We ducked into the nearest arcade, and it felt like a whole new world. Keith, my quiet childhood friend, suddenly transformed right in front of me. He dominated every game, his focus sharp, as those heterochromatic eyes locked on targets. He won again and again, until he earned the prize he'd been aiming for. 2 stuffed bunnies, linked by tiny magnets, like we were meant to stay together too. He handed me the pink one, his fingers brushing mine like it was no big deal. I was still processing it when a tiny voice pulled me away from the moment. A little boy trotted over, his small hand tugging at my dress like he had a mission. Before I could laugh, Keith stepped in front of me like he was protecting something precious. He knelt down, his voice so gentle I barely recognized it. I couldn't hear what he said, but the boy nodded like he understood every word. Then Keith looked up at me, and my cheeks burned so hot I thought they'd glow. The boy ran off, and Keith turned back to me like nothing had happened. But the heat in my cheeks told me this wasn't just another friendly moment. Our bunnies clicked together, just like something deep inside me. I didn't know what to say, so I just stared at the bunny in my hands. My heart was racing so fast I swore everyone in the arcade could hear it. We walked through the arcade together, like we'd done this 100 times before, but I knew nothing would ever be the same between us again. The charm bracelet on my wrist felt heavier than ever, like it held a secret too. The arcade buzzed around us, but all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat. After our chaotic arcade date, Keith led me to a mist-shrouded park bench, his eyes glinting faintly. I had no idea what he was hiding, something he'd guarded carefully for months. His hands trembled as he reached into his pocket, my heart racing with unspoken anticipation. Then he pulled out a tiny velvet box, its surface catching the faint golden streetlight. I held my breath, wondering what precious secret this tiny box contained. When he lifted the lid, I gasped. Delicate flower charms winked up at me, each one familiar. Every charm matched a flower from my garden, even the rare ones I'd only mentioned once. Tears pricked my eyes. He'd remembered every detail of my favorite garden, even the smallest blooms. Keith's voice softened as he began to tell me the story behind this incredible gift. He said he'd spent months crafting each charm by hand, skipping study sessions to finish it. He researched my pollen allergy to make me safe, so I could touch my favorite flowers without fear. I reached out, my fingers brushing the cool metal, overwhelmed by his thoughtful care. When he fastened it around my wrist, it felt like he was tying our hearts together. Not just jewelry. Tears spilled down my cheeks. This wasn't just a gift, it was a piece of his heart. Keith smiled softly, his eyes shining with relief. He'd been nervous I wouldn't understand. We sat in silence for minutes, the bracelet a quiet promise between us in the misty night. I ran my fingers over each charm again, memorizing every tiny detail he crafted with love. The mist wrapped around us like a blanket, hiding our quiet moment from the rest of the world. This bracelet wasn't just jewelry, it was proof of how deeply he saw me, every hidden detail. As we walked away, I knew this wasn't the end, just the start of our quiet, heartfelt story. That charm bracelet had me staring at my wrist, wide awake, for hours. I couldn't sleep, my mind replaying every soft look Keith gave me that night. Then it hit me, the DIY watch kit I'd stashed in my desk weeks ago. I stumbled to my desk, my heart racing with a new idea. I'd bought it on a whim, but now it felt like it was meant for this exact moment. I chose brown and green, exactly the colors of Keith's heterochromatic eyes. I wove for hours, my fingers sore, but my heart full. Each loop felt like a little secret I was keeping just for Keith. I didn't notice the sky turning pink until my wrists ached too much to move. The final strap looked just like I'd imagined, perfect for his eyes. I attached the strap to the watch, my hands shaking a little with nerves. Then I carved a little message on the back, something only we'd understand. I didn't want it to be flashy, just something quiet. And ours. I tucked it into a blue gift box, my chest tight with excitement. I set it on my nightstand, already imagining Keith's face when he saw it. But a tiny part of me worried, would he even like it? Then I looked at our old photo, and I knew he'd love it. I finally lay down, exhaustion hitting me, but my heart still racing. I fell asleep, dreaming of giving it to him at school the next day. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. I had so much to say, without even speaking. I thought breakfast would be normal. Until Francis slammed his mug down, his eyes locked on the gift box I'd hidden under my napkin. My throat went dry. He knew. He had to know. Before I could speak, he asked the question I feared most. Is he your boyfriend now? The words hung heavy in the air. I choked on my pancake, my face burning with embarrassment. Carmi scolded him, but I could barely breathe past the panic. Francis just stared, his gaze sharp enough to cut through lies. I shook my head, stammering that we were just friends. My hands shook as I clutched the gift box tighter, hoping he'd believe me. Tim glanced up from his newspaper, his expression unreadable. But the way his jaw tightened told me he didn't buy a word of it. I shifted my feet under the table, my throat still tight with fear. Carmi tried to calm him down, but he was too focused on me. I wanted to run, to hide in my room, and never come out. But the gift box peeked out from under the napkin, a silent reminder of what I feared. Reached for it slowly, like he was testing my reaction. I slapped my hand down on it, my voice cracking with panic. Everyone froze. All eyes were on me, and I wanted to disappear. I whispered that it was just a silly gift, but my voice shook too much to be convincing. Francis stared for a long time, then finally leaned back in his chair. Carmi quickly handed me water, her eyes full of worry. Tim tapped his newspaper, a silent signal that the conversation was over. I grabbed the gift box and rushed to my room before anyone could say anything else. I slammed my bedroom door shut, my heart racing like it would burst. I clutched the gift box in my backpack, my steps growing heavier as I reached school hallways. The usual buzz of the hallway felt louder, like every eye was on me. My nerves spiked. I'd spent all night making this watch for Keith. I scanned the lockers, praying he'd be there like he promised. And there he was, leaning against my locker like he owned the place. He waved, and my heart did a flip I couldn't control. I forced a smile, my cheeks burning as I walked toward him. I was about to pull out the watch when a chill ran down my spine. And there he was, Francis, watching us from the hallway end, his stare like ice. My smile faded. I should have known he'd find out. Keith followed my gaze, his jaw tightening at the sight of Francis. He didn't move, didn't look away, like he was judging every second of this. Keith nodded toward the exit, his voice low when he spoke. Let's talk somewhere private, he said, like he could read my mind. I nodded, my steps quickening to get away from Francis's stare. I didn't look back, but I could feel his eyes burning into my back. The sunlight hit us as we stepped outside, warming my cold shoulders. The campus garden was quiet, filled with the buzz of bees and blooming flowers. Keith led me to a wooden bench tucked away behind rose bushes. I reached for my backpack, finally ready to give him the watch I'd made. Keith smiled, his eyes softening like he already knew what I had for him. The roses around us seemed to bloom brighter, like they knew this moment mattered. For the first time all day, I felt like I could breathe. I led Keith to the quiet garden corner, my backpack feeling heavier than ever. We'd escaped the busy campus, finally finding a spot just for us. My hands shook as I reached for the gift I'd spent weeks making. I pulled out the blue gift box, my throat tight with nerves. Here, I said, pushing the box toward him. It's for you. His fingers brushed mine as he took it, sending a jolt through my body. He lifted the lid slowly, his heterochromatic eyes locked on the inside. It was the watch I'd made, straps matching his brown and green eyes. He picked it up, turning it over in his fingers, curiosity in his eyes. On the back, I'd carved the words, "For my Mr. Protagonist." A soft smile spread across his face, and my heart skipped a beat. He looked up at me, his eyes warm, and I knew he understood my feelings. I felt my cheeks burn, staring away to hide my flustered expression. For a perfect moment, it felt like we were the only two in the world. Then a rustle from the rose bushes broke our quiet bubble. Calvin stepped out, grinning, holding his medical book like he'd caught us. Well, he teased. Looks like I found a sweet secret. Keith's ears turned bright red, clearly flustered by the interruption. I hid my face in my hands, wishing I could disappear right there. Calvin laughed loudly, waving his book like he'd just won a prize. Our quiet, sweet moment was gone, replaced by awkward laughter and teasing. Calvin popped out of nowhere, and suddenly I was his future sister-in-law. Keith's ears turned bright red, and I wanted to vanish into the rose bushes right then. I fidgeted with my charm bracelet, too flustered to make eye contact with either of them. Calvin clapped Keith on the back, calling him a sappy romantic, loud enough for everyone to hear. I thought he was just being his usual teasing self, but Keith's jaw tightened like there was more to it. I mentioned how long Keith had spent making my bracelet, months I thought it took. Calvin grinned wider and dropped the bomb Keith had skipped study sessions to finish it. Keith's jaw clenched so tight, I thought his teeth might crack from the pressure. I had no idea he'd gone to that much trouble just to make me something special. Keith pushed Calvin away and started to walk off, like he couldn't stand to stay another second. I reached out like I could stop him, but my hand froze halfway there, unsure what to do. Calvin held up his hands like he hadn't done anything wrong, but I could see he was amused. Keith's shoulders were stiff, like every word had been a punch to his quiet pride. I ran after him, my shoes crunching on the gravel path, desperate to say something. I grabbed his wrist, and he stopped mid-step, his body still tense and rigid. I looked up at him, and for a second, I saw how much he'd really cared about this. Keith's eyes softened, and he looked like he wanted to say something, but he held back at the last second. Calvin watched from the rosebush, a small smile on his face like he'd gotten the reaction he wanted. I squeezed his hand, letting him know I didn't mind. None of the silly teasing mattered, not really. The tension melted away, and for a moment, everything felt light and warm, like the start of something new. I fled to the library to escape all the awkwardness, desperate for a moment of peace. The quiet stacks felt like a safe haven, until that familiar grinning face appeared across from me. It was Hansel, Keith's loudmouth best friend. He clearly knew exactly what he wanted to ask. He leaned in, bombarding me with questions about our rainy arcade date, no dodging him. I tried to shush him, my face on fire as nearby students stared at our noisy corner. I could feel my ears burning, wishing the floor would just swallow me whole. But Hansel didn't care. He kept going, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. "He's been in love with you forever," he said, like it was the most obvious secret in the world. I froze, my eyes widening. In love? Keith? That couldn't be right. Could it? My mind raced, replaying every little moment we'd shared. Had he really been showing signs I missed? Hansel just nodded, listing all the little things Keith did that should have given it away, all the times I dismissed them as friendship. I stared at the charm bracelet Keith made me, my fingers brushing the flower-shaped charms. Then his tone got serious. "If you don't act fast, someone else will snatch him up." I froze again. Someone else? The thought made my chest tighten for some reason. Hansel stood up, grinning like he'd just dropped a bombshell, and loved it. "Don't say I didn't warn you," he called over his shoulder, disappearing between the stacks. I stared at my phone, my thumb hovering over Keith's contact name. What was I supposed to do now? The library felt quiet again, but my mind was anything but calm. So many thoughts swirling around my head. I tried to focus on my book, but I couldn't stop replaying everything Hansel had just told me. Maybe I needed to stop being oblivious and face what was right in front of me. I closed my book, taking a deep breath. I knew what I had to do, even if it scared me. With my bag slung over my shoulder, I walked toward the library doors, my heart pounding in my chest. Hansel's words kept ringing in my head. "He's in love with you, you know." I sat there, staring at the charm bracelet on my wrist, my heart racing for no reason. He'd spent months making this, skipping study sessions just to get every detail right. I remembered that rainy arcade date, when he gave me this bunny, linked to his with tiny magnets. At the time, I thought it was just a cute gift. Now, it felt like a promise. I thought about how he dominated every game at the arcade, his heterochromatic eyes locked on every target. For the first time, I saw past his quiet exterior to the boy who'd always watched over me. When that little boy asked me to marry him, Keith stepped in and said I'd marry him instead. I'd laughed it off then, but my cheeks were burning again just thinking about it. I thought back to all the small moments when he helped me after I failed my math test, when he found my lost stuffed animal. He'd always been there, quiet and steady, even when I didn't notice. I'd stayed up all night making this watch, matching the colors of his eyes. I thought it was just a friend's gift. Now I realized I'd been just as in love, just as blind to my own feelings. He'd made each flower charm from my garden, knowing I was allergic to real flowers. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just friendship. I loved him, too. I'd been in love with my quiet childhood friend for longer than I could remember. My chest felt tight, but it was a good kind of tight, like my heart had finally found its place. I reached for my phone, ready to tell him everything, but my fingers hovered over his contact, too nervous to press send. What if he didn't feel the same anymore? What if I'd misread every sign? No, he'd shown me enough. Tomorrow, I'd tell him. I'd tell him I loved him too. This bunny was more than a gift. It was proof we were always meant to be together. I was just grabbing lunch, never guessing my ordinary day was about to twist. The cafeteria was as loud as always, full of students laughing and chatting. Then he stepped up, this guy from my literature class I barely knew. When he asked me to the campus dance, my eyes darted straight to Keith. And there he was, jaw clenched tight, staring right at me from across the room. I froze, my mind racing. How do I answer without hurting anyone? I could feel his tension even from across the noisy room. Just as I was about to speak, his phone started vibrating loudly. The sudden sound cut through the noise, making everyone glance over. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, my shoulders relaxing. But when I looked back at Keith, he was still staring, his jaw still tight. What was he thinking? Did he care someone asked me to the dance? The cafeteria felt way too quiet all of a sudden, even with everyone talking. My lunch suddenly tasted like nothing, my appetite completely gone. When he walked back over, he looked flustered, not even meeting my eyes. He mumbled an apology and said he had to go, then left quickly. I stood there alone, even more confused than before. Across the room, I saw Keith finally relax his grip on his fork. Then he stood up and started walking straight toward me. My heart started pounding again. What was he going to say to me? He stopped right in front of me, and the whole world felt like it went quiet. His voice was low, and all I could focus on was every word he said. No one else seemed to notice, but for us, this moment felt huge. I reached out without thinking, my hand wrapping around his wrist. In that noisy cafeteria, it felt like it was just the two of us. I sat across from Keith in the bustling cafeteria, my heart beating a little faster. I'd been rehearsing this moment all morning, how to tell him I'd turned down the dance invitation. His fork paused midair, those heterochromatic eyes locking onto mine, waiting for me to speak. I took a deep breath and blurted it out. I'd said no to that guy from my literature class. A slow, warm smile spread across his face, like he'd been holding his breath too, waiting for my answer. Before I could say anything else, a loud thud made us jump. Hansel had appeared out of nowhere. He slid into the seat beside Keith, grinning like he knew a secret we didn't. His eyes practically sparkled. There was no way he wasn't about to ask the question I dreaded. My cheeks burned instantly, and I stared down at my plate, suddenly fixated on leftover pasta. When I dared to glance up, I caught Keith looking at me, his eyes soft, full of quiet hope. The cafeteria noise faded for a second, like even other students were waiting for our answer. My ears felt hot enough to steam. Why did this question feel scarier than turning down that guy? Hansel didn't let us linger. He leaned in closer, practically bouncing in his seat. Suddenly, a warm hand covered mine Keith's, his touch gentle like he was calming my nerves. When I looked up at him, I knew, whatever happened, I didn't want to go to that dance with anyone else. Keith nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving mine like he was giving me permission to speak. My voice came out quiet, but clear. We'll go together to the dance. Keith's face lit up, his smile, bigger and brighter than I'd ever seen it before, like a weight lifted off his shoulders. Hansel whooped so loud that half the cafeteria turned to look, but I didn't care. Not when Keith was looking at me like that. As the cafeteria noise swelled back up, I squeezed Keith's hand. Our dance date finally felt real, and my heart was soaring. I needed to talk to someone, so I found Candace in the campus garden. I had no idea she'd been watching our friendship for years. She said she'd known Keith liked me since we were kids. Like that time, I failed my math test, and he stayed to help me. He stayed late, even though he had his own exams to study for. He remembered every little thing about me, even my allergies. Even when I lost my favorite stuffed animal, he searched everywhere for it. He searched the whole neighborhood in the rain to find it. I never realized how much effort he put into caring for me. He showed up at my door soaked, just to make me happy. All those small moments meant so much more than I thought. He's loved you quietly, for longer than you can imagine. You don't have to be afraid to let yourself love him back. For the first time, I knew exactly how I felt about him. I loved him, and I didn't want to hide it anymore. Every charm on this bracelet was a piece of his heart. I knew you'd figure out your feelings eventually. I couldn't wait to find him, to tell him everything I felt. My heart was racing, but for the first time, I wasn't scared. This wasn't the end, this was just the start of our story. Every step I took felt like I was getting closer to him. He's cared for me in ways I never even noticed for so long. Carmi and I were lost in a romantic movie in our cozy living room, totally unprepared for what came next. It felt like any other peaceful night until the front door creaked open. It was Francis, home early from work, his face unreadable and tense. He walked straight toward us, and my heart started to race for no good reason. The warm air suddenly felt thick, like we were holding our breaths without realizing. I could see his hand tense up slightly. Something was definitely on his mind. I clutched my pillow tighter, suddenly scared of what he was about to say. He sat down across from us, leaning forward, like he was about to share a heavy secret. His eyes locked on mine, and I knew this wasn't going to be a casual chat. Carmi gave my arm a gentle squeeze, trying to calm my racing heart. Then he asked the question that made my throat go dry. Are you truly happy with Keith? I froze. I hadn't expected him to be so direct about my relationship with Keith. I sat up straight, took a deep breath, and looked him right in the eye. I nodded, my voice steady despite my nerves. Yes, Francis, I truly am. His brow furrowed deeper, and I could see the worry in his eyes growing. Carmi tried to step in, but Francis held up a hand, stopping her. He let out a long sigh, like a weight was pressing down on his shoulders. I've always worried about you, he said, his voice softer now. I felt my eyes warm up, grateful for his quiet care underneath that tough exterior. But if you're happy, that's all that matters. I'll respect your choice. A huge weight lifted off my chest finally. I felt understood by my brother. The room felt warm again, the tension melting away like ice in the fireplace. The fire crackled softly, like it was celebrating our small victory. Francis stood up, ready to head to his room, but he paused at the door. He glanced back at me, a small, rare smile tugging at his lips. Good night, Rihanna. I smiled back, my heart full of warmth and relief. This night had turned out better than I dared hope. Carmi and I turned back to the movie, but this time I felt truly at peace. The movie played on, but nothing could dampen the warm, light feeling in my chest. I leaned against Carmi, finally letting all my earlier tension fade away completely. As the night grew later, I realized this was what family was: quiet understanding, even in the tough moments. I was walking to class when a shadow suddenly blocked my path. It was Keith, standing rigidly in the busy campus hallway. His hands were shaking as he clutched a crisp white envelope. He extended it toward me, his fingers trembling too much to hold it steady. Before I could react, he pressed it into my hand and stepped back quickly. His eyes darted away from mine, his ears burning bright red with nerves. He turned on his heel, already starting to flee before I could say a word. He sprinted down the hallway, leaving students staring and whispering in his wake. My own fingers started to shake as I clutched the envelope tightly. I stood frozen in the hallway, staring at the spot where he'd vanished. The envelope had a pale blue wax seal, stamped with his initials. I ran my thumb over the seal, my heart racing with curiosity and excitement. The hallway kept moving around me, but I couldn't bring myself to move another step. I I slowly curled my finger around the flap, ready to find out what was inside. I leaned against the locker, needing to steady myself before I opened it. My heart felt like it might burst out of my chest as I stared at the envelope. The noise of the hallway faded away, leaving only the sound of my own racing heart. I caught a glimpse of pale pink paper peeking out from the envelope. I took a deep breath, finally ready to uncover what Keith had written for me. With a shaky breath, I tore open the seal and pulled out the letter inside. I climbed to the school rooftop, the envelope burning in my hand. My heart raced faster than the wind up here. I'd replayed this moment 100 times in my head. Would he even show up? Then I saw him slow, steady, just like always. My breath caught in my throat. He walked closer, each step making the silence feel louder. I didn't dare look up at first. When I finally lifted my eyes, he was already looking at me. No more easy smiles, just quiet intensity. I held out the envelope, my fingers trembling. I want to go to the dance with you. His fingers brushed mine as he took it. For a second, neither of us moved. I watched his face, waiting for anything. Then, a small smile tugged at his lips. He took a step closer, then another. Suddenly, the rooftop felt too small, too warm. My face burned. I could hear my own heartbeat over the wind. What was he going to say? He stopped just inches away. His voice was low, like he was sharing a secret. I've been holding something in for a long time, Rian. Something I need you to know. My breath hitched. This was it. The moment I'd both dreaded and hoped for. The wind picked up, tangling my hair around my face. But I didn't care. I just wanted to listen. He lifted a hand, like he was going to brush my hair back. Then he paused, like he was nervous too. For a second, we just stood there, letting the wind carry the silence. It felt like forever, yet no time at all. When he spoke again, his voice was steadier, like he'd found his courage at last. I need you to know that. You're not just my childhood friend anymore. Not to me. My hands clenched into fists. I'd waited so long for this, but now it felt too much, too fast. The sun started to set, painting the sky pink and orange. I took a deep breath, ready to hear every word. I'd hidden this secret for years, and now was my chance to tell her. We stood on that quiet rooftop, the wind carrying all my unspoken words. My throat felt tight, but I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I pulled out the bracelet I'd spent months making, just for her. It all started when we were kids, sharing a single cookie on her porch. That's when I first knew I felt something different for her. Her smile that day stuck with me through every year that passed. Each charm was a flower from her garden, picked just for her. I skipped study sessions, stayed up late, just to make it perfect. I could see her eyes well up, and my heart raced faster than ever. She reached out, like she was about to say something back. But just then, the school bell rang, loud and sharp, shattering our moment. Students flooded onto the rooftop, laughing and talking, completely unaware. My face burned with embarrassment. I'd been so close. I grabbed Hansel's hand and pulled him away, too flustered to stay. I stood there, the words I'd wanted to say stuck in my throat. The rooftop was no longer our quiet place. It was just another crowded spot. But the bracelet on my wrist reminded me this wasn't the end. I stared at the way he'd gone, wondering when I'd get to tell him how I felt. The sun started to set, and I knew I had to wait for the right moment. Every charm on that bracelet was a piece of his heart, and I wasn't giving up. I turned to leave, already planning how I'd find him again tomorrow. I could still feel the heat of his words burning in my ears. Then Hansel came barreling through the crowd, yelling like a madman. What the hell just happened? He practically screamed at me. Before I could answer, Keith yanked him away, his face still bright red. I just stood there, my hands clamped over my burning face. My face burned so hot I thought I'd melt right there. He said he'd loved me for years, since we were just kids. His two different colored eyes were softer than I'd ever seen them. He brushed a strand of hair from my face, and my heart stopped cold. I was so stunned, I couldn't say a single word back to him. Back in the hallway, my heart was still pounding like a drum. Everyone around me was moving, but I felt completely frozen in time. I looked down at his bracelet, and suddenly, it meant everything to me. He'd spent months making it, just for me knowing I couldn't touch real flowers. I stared at the empty hallway where he'd disappeared, my mind racing. I kept replaying his confession over and over in my head. All those little moments, they weren't just friendly gestures, were they? The bunnies with magnetic paws, he'd been signaling me all along. I didn't know what to do now, or how to face him next time. But one thing was clear. Nothing between us would ever be the same again. I stepped through my mansion door, my heart still tangled with unspoken feelings. My bedroom, once just a safe space, now felt like an arena for my confused heart. That pink stuffed bunny Keith's rainy day gift stared back like a silent question. As I held it, every memory with Keith flooded back: the arcade, the bracelet, the rain. The campus dance invitation sat beside it, a chance I couldn't afford to waste. Campus spring dance, 3 words that held more weight than any exam I'd ever taken. This bracelet, Keith's handiwork, wasn't just jewelry, it was a confession in metal and resin. I'd been so blind, so afraid to admit what my heart had known all along. I remembered the arcade, how he laughed when he won the bunnies, how I felt alive with him. No more hiding, no more overthinking. I had to tell him the truth. I grabbed the invitation, my fingers tightening around the stiff cardstock. My hands shook, not with fear, but with the thrill of finally being honest. Every corner of this room held memories of us, proof we were always meant to be more. That photo from the beach, we were kids then, but even then, there was something more. I took a deep breath, ready to stop being the friend and start being the girl who loved him. A smile spread across my face for the first time in months. I felt truly free. I stood up, my feet carrying me toward the closet where my dance dress waited. That soft pink dress, once just a fancy garment, was now my armor. I held it to my chest, imagining the look on Keith's face when he saw me. I clipped the bracelet on, a reminder of everything we had and everything we could have. Tomorrow night, at the dance, I would finally tell Keith I love him too. No more what-ifs, no more missed chances. This time, I wouldn't let him slip away. I stood before the gym, my pink dress fluttering, heart racing like a drum. The gym doors loomed ahead, and there he was, holding that paper bouquet I'd imagined 1,000 times. His heterochromatic eyes locked onto mine, and time seemed to freeze. I walked toward him, each step feeling like it lasted an eternity. He opened his mouth, and my breath caught in my throat. "You look absolutely stunning tonight, Rianne," he said, voice soft as silk. My cheeks burned, and I could barely form words in response. "You look really handsome too in your suit," I stammered. A smile spread across his face, and he reached out his hand to me. I placed my hand in his, and his fingers curled around mine, warm, firm, safe. We started walking toward the dance floor, our hands intertwined tightly. "I've been waiting for this night for so long," he whispered in my ear. His words sent a shiver down my spine, and I squeezed his hand tighter. The dance floor was alive with color and music, and we were heading right into it. People parted around us, like we were the only two people in the room. He pulled me close, his hand resting gently on my waist. We looked at each other, and the noise of the world faded away completely. In that moment, I knew this was where I was meant to be all along. He pulled me into a hug, and I buried my face in his warm chest. This night wasn't just a dance, it was the start of our forever story. I never thought this slow dance would be the moment I'd waited my whole life for. Keith's arm tightened around my waist, his breath warm against my ear. I could still feel the charm bracelet he made me, pressing gently against my wrist. He whispered that he'd waited years for this exact moment with me. In that moment, the whole world faded away, leaving only him and me. My eyes filled with tears as I looked up at him, my voice barely a whisper. I told him I loved him too, words I'd hidden deep in my heart for so long. A soft, surprised smile spread across his face, his eyes glowing with emotion. He lifted my chin gently, his touch warm and tender against my skin, and then he kissed my forehead, a gentle gesture that said more than words ever could. I didn't notice Francis standing at the entrance, watching us silently. His face was unreadable, but I could see the conflict swirling in his eyes. He clenched his fist tightly, as if fighting with some internal struggle. I leaned my head on his chest, listening to the steady, reassuring beat of his heart. The fairy lights above twinkled, wrapping us in a warm, glowing embrace. His hand stayed on my waist, a silent promise that he'd never let me go. Other students smiled at us, some cheering quietly from the sidelines. I reached up to touch his cheek, memorizing the sharp line of his jaw. Francis finally turned and walked away, leaving us in our own little world. In that moment, I knew this was just the beginning of our forever. We danced slowly, lost in each other, as the music wrapped around us like a hug. I never felt more loved, more at home, than I did in that moment. The dance ended, my hand locked with Keith's, nerves fluttering as we headed for the entrance. I'd barely caught my breath when I spotted them waiting by the doors. Francis stood first, his jaw tight like he was ready to lecture, and right beside him was Calvin, grinning like he already knew everything. My heart skipped a beat when we were about to face the final test. I twisted the charm bracelet on my wrist, suddenly terrified of what Francis would say. He took a step forward, and I held my breath. But Calvin snickered, breaking the tension before Francis could speak. "You're still a brat," Francis grumbled, and my heart sank. But Keith's gaze stayed steady, like he wasn't going to back down. I bit my lip, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "But I guess you make her happy," he muttered, and my heart soared. Keith smiled, and I felt the tension leave my shoulders at last. Calvin clapped Keith on the back, teasing him about finally winning me over. I squeezed Keith's hand, unable to stop grinning back. Even Francis had a tiny smile hidden under his scowl. The crowd thinned, leaving just us four in the warm glow of the lights. I couldn't believe it, we'd actually won Francis over. Calvin told a terrible joke, and even Francis snorted a laugh. As we walked away, I knew this was just the start of our story. With Keith's hand in mine, I felt ready for anything. And as the lights dimmed, I knew our happiest chapter was just beginning. Our relationship was finally out in the open, and everyone was watching us. The cafeteria was louder than ever, full of whispers about our new relationship. Then a group of girls made their way straight to our table, grinning like they had a plan. They surrounded us, their voices low and full of excitement. I could feel my cheeks burning, unsure exactly what they wanted from Keith. One girl held out her phone, asking for Keith's number with a giggle. Keith smiled politely, but his answer was clear. He was already taken. Some of them looked disappointed, muttering as they started to step back. But one girl didn't leave quietly. She fixed her eyes right on me. She laughed loudly, calling me a spoiled rich girl who didn't deserve Keith. My fingers curled around my fork so tight my knuckles turned white. Keith placed his hand over mine, his touch warm and protective. He told her to leave, his voice cold and firm. No room for argument. The girl huffed and stormed off, but the damage was already done. Whispers spread through the cafeteria right away, all about what she'd said. Everyone was staring at us now, their eyes full of curiosity and judgment. Then Hansel slammed his hand on a nearby table, standing up for us. He yelled that we were happy together, and no one had a right to judge. The cafeteria went quiet for a moment. Then, the buzz started up again. I squeezed Keith's hand, knowing this was just the start of the rumors. By the end of lunch, the rumors were already spreading beyond the cafeteria. Candace texted me, saying she'd heard the gossip all around campus. We left the cafeteria together, our shoulders tense but our hands still linked. People turned to watch us as we walked, their whispers following us down the hall. I didn't know how we'd face all this, but I knew Keith would stay by my side. That girl's snide comment hit me like a punch. I wasn't going to let her talk about us that way. I pushed back my chair and stood up, every eye in the cafeteria turning to watch. The girl froze, clearly shocked I'd actually confront her. I walked straight to her, my voice steady but firm. I told her what mattered wasn't her opinions, it was that Keith and I cared about each other. I wasn't going to let her make me feel small, not when Keith and I had something real. She started to stutter, clearly realizing she'd crossed a line. She mumbled an apology, her face turning bright red with embarrassment. She practically ran out of the cafeteria, not daring to look back. Then I felt his eyes on me. Keith was coming over, a soft smile on his face. His eyes were glowing with pride that I'd stood up for us, for myself. He walked straight to me, pulled me close, and whispered how proud he was of me. For the first time all day, I felt completely safe in his arms. I leaned into his chest, letting all my frustration melt away. The cafeteria erupted in quiet applause. We'd stood up for ourselves, and everyone could see it. I glanced down at my charm bracelet, proof of how well Keith knew me, how much he cared. We walked out hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next together. Our fingers laced together, and I knew nothing could break us not anymore. The sun hit our faces as we stepped outside, and I felt like we could take on the world. That day, I learned standing up for yourself and the people you love was the bravest thing you could do. I was buried in my studies at the library, unaware the storm was brewing. Quiet pages turning, students whispering, nothing seemed out of place. Until my phone buzzed, a notification I wish I'd never clicked on. There it was, the lie that Keith was only with me for my family's money. Keith slid into the seat beside me, acting casual, but I saw his tension. His jaw was clenched so tight, I could see the muscle flexing. He flipped through his textbook, like nothing was wrong, but his grip was too tight. I placed my hand on his, silent support that spoke louder than words. I glanced around, others had seen it too, their eyes darting to us. The comments were cruel, piling on the lie like it was fact. Anger burned in my chest. How could they judge us without knowing us? Keith's heterochromatic eyes held hurt he tried so hard to hide. He took a deep breath and closed his book like he wanted to escape. I looked at the charm bracelet. Keith made me proof of his true feelings. The library felt suffocating, filled with whispers and judgment. Keith's jaw stayed clenched, a silent sign the words had cut deep. I almost typed a furious reply, then hesitated. Keith stopped me, shaking his head. He didn't want to give the trolls attention. He squeezed my hand tight, a silent promise we'd get through this together. The sun began to set, casting warm light over the chaos we'd been forced to face. I smiled, knowing the truth was stronger than any lie. Keith smiled back, tired but grateful for my support. We packed our things, ready to leave the whispers behind. Together, we'd face whatever came next. No lie could break us. I dragged myself home, knowing I had to tell Francis about the terrible online post. Francis walked in, completely unaware the news would ignite his rage. When I showed him the post, his face burned bright red with unbridled anger. He slammed his papers down, his voice booming with threats for that girl. I grabbed his arm to stop him, terrified this would make everything worse. He snarled that he'd make her delete the post or get expelled entirely. I begged him not to act rashly, warning it would backfire on us. But he ignored me, pulling out his phone to make some cold, calculated calls. He was calling the dean, already putting his ruthless plan into motion. My hands clenched the couch, my chest tight with fear of what would come next. His voice thundered through the room, leaving no room for argument. When he hung up, his gaze told me he wouldn't back down, no matter what I said. There was no mercy in his eyes. He was determined to make her pay. I could only watch, my heart heavy with dread for the fallout we'd face. He grabbed his coat, already heading out to set his plan in full motion. Every second felt like an eternity as he prepared to leave and seal that girl's fate. I called out to him one last time, but he didn't even turn back. The door clicked shut, leaving me alone to fear the chaos his anger would unleash. I stared at the cruel post again, knowing this was only the beginning of our troubles. The fire crackled, but it did nothing to warm my cold, anxious heart. The next day at school, Keith and I were surrounded by staring, whispering students. I soon figured out why new rumors were spreading like wildfire on the school floor. They claimed Frances had threatened the student to delete her original post. Keith stepped in front of me, guiding me through the crowd with tense shoulders. I could feel every gaze on me, my hands sweating with embarrassment and fear. I clung to Keith's arm, throat tight as I tried to block out the whispers. Then I saw Francis at the hallway end, his face dark with frustration. The student who started this was with him, looking terrified and guilty. Keith stepped forward, firmly positioning himself between me and Francis. His heterochromatic eyes were sharp, determined to protect me no matter what. Students filmed everything, phones held high to capture every tense moment. I looked at the girl who caused this, and she quickly looked away, ashamed. The hallway went quiet, everyone waiting to see what would unfold next. Francis's fist was clenched tight, his face red with anger and frustration. The tension between them was thick enough to cut with a knife. I twisted the charm bracelet, a reminder of Keith's care amid the chaos. The girl stepped forward, voice quiet, as she started to apologize for everything. Keith's expression softened at her apology, his shoulders relaxing slightly. The crowd dispersed, the hallway slowly returning to its usual busy state. Keith pulled me into his arms, whispering that everything would be okay now. Francis watched us for a moment, then turned and walked away without a word. Tears were in my eyes, but I smiled grateful for Keith's unwavering protection. We fled to the rooftop, desperate to escape the cruel rumors about us. It felt like the whole world was against us, and this rooftop was our only escape. Just when we thought we were alone, Hansel came rushing up, eyes blazing with purpose. He was clutching his laptop like it held the key to saving everything. I could tell whatever he had to show us was going to change everything. Look, this is the proof we need. I took this weeks ago, when he was making your bracelet. My breath caught. This was the evidence that could finally clear his name. Keith's shoulders relaxed. He didn't even know Hansel had taken this photo. If we post this on the university forum, everyone will see the truth. I nodded without hesitation. This was our only chance to fight back. Keith squeezed my shoulder. We were in this together, no matter what. Hansel hovered his finger over the enter button. This was the moment of truth. With a single click, the photo was out there, our message to the world. He let out a long breath like he'd been holding it for days. I touched the charm bracelet on my wrist. This was all for him. We stood there watching the sunset, hoping this would be the end of our nightmare. But a small part of me still wondered, would this be enough to fix everything? Keith squeezed my hand, silently telling me we'd get through this together. Hansel's laptop pinged people who were already liking and sharing our post. As the city lights came on, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe we could win this fight after all. Then his phone buzzed. Someone had already commented on our post. He burst out laughing. People were already defending us, calling out the rumors. I raised an eyebrow, wondering what could make him laugh at a time like this. He showed me the comments. Someone had recognized the truth in our story. A smile spread across my face. We weren't alone in this fight. That photo of Keith making my charm bracelet, it blew up on the university forum overnight. Everyone was talking about how sweet and thoughtful he was. Comments flooded in, all gushing over his hidden romantic side. Then she showed up, the girl who started all those terrible rumors. I tensed up, ready for another fight, but her eyes were filled with regret. She apologized, voice shaking, said she'd been jealous of us. I glanced at Keith, his face already softening, no trace of anger left. She admitted she'd made up everything out of spite, hated how happy we were. Keith spoke first, told her we forgave her, that holding on to hate only hurt herself. She burst into tears, bowed deeply, and ran off before we could say anything else. I felt a weight lift off my chest. Those awful rumors were finally over. Even the other students noticed, their whispers turning to quiet approval. Keith squeezed my hand tight, his eyes saying everything words couldn't. We walked down the corridor together. No more stairs, no more whispers. For the first time in weeks, I felt truly free to love him without fear. The charm bracelet on my wrist glinted in the sun, a reminder of everything we'd overcome. Later, I checked the forum, hundreds of comments now defending us, praising Keith's kindness. Keith had even set our photo as his wallpaper, a quiet declaration of our love. Then, we found Candace in the garden, already grinning like she'd known this would happen. She said she knew those rumors would backfire, that truth always wins in the end. It felt like everything was finally falling into place, like we could breathe again. The flowers in the garden bloomed bright, but I didn't need them. Keith's charm bracelet was more than enough. Every charm held a memory, a piece of the love we'd built together. We walked back to class, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next together. This wasn't the end of our story, but it was a perfect new beginning. I never expected my dad to invite Keith to dinner. This was no casual family meal. The air felt thick with tension, like we were waiting for a verdict, not a meal. Keith's knuckles whitened as he gripped his fork. He knew this was make or break. Then my dad leaned forward, his voice sharp and direct. "What are your plans for Rianne?" My heart raced. I didn't know if Keith could put his feelings into words. Keith took a deep breath, and for the first time, he didn't hold back. He told my dad he loved me, that he'd planned to build a life with me, slow and steady. I watched my dad's expression soften. He wasn't just listening, he was believing. I could barely hold back my tears. This was more than approval, it was acceptance. Then my dad nodded slow, deliberate, like he'd made a final decision. But he wasn't done. There was one more thing he needed to say. Keith's brow furrowed. He didn't know what was coming next. "I want to meet your parents," he said, like this was the final step. Keith's face lit up. This was the seal of approval he'd been waiting for. He nodded so quickly, I thought his neck might break. "Yes, sir, of course." I felt like my heart might burst. This was the future I'd always dreamed of. The tension melted away, replaced by a warmth I'd never felt at this dinner table before. My dad raised his glass. This wasn't just a toast. It was a welcome into our family. The clink of our glasses felt like the start of something extraordinary. In that moment, I knew our story was only just beginning, and it was going to be perfect. Keith's hand found mine under the table, warm and steady, like he was anchoring me. I could see the pride in my dad's eyes. He'd found someone worthy of his daughter. I sipped my water, trying to calm my racing heart, but it was no use. The fire crackled, casting warm light on our faces, like it was celebrating with us. In that warm, glowing room, I knew we'd overcome every obstacle to get here. I held my breath through dinner. When Dad dropped a bombshell no one saw coming, Dad leaned back, his eyes fixed on Keith, like he was about to change our lives forever. He said he'd watched Keith's business projects, and he was impressed, really impressed. Keith's hand trembled under mine. His breath caught, like he couldn't process what he was hearing. Then he said the words that made Keith's face light up like the 4th of July. He was offering Keith an internship at Cartel Enterprises, our family's company. Keith's eyes went from wide with shock to sparkling with pure, unfiltered joy. He leaned forward, like he was afraid he'd wake up from a dream if he moved too fast. I could barely hold back my own tears. This was everything Keith had worked for. Keith tried to speak, but all that came out was a stuttering mess of thank yous. Dad just smiled, like he'd known all along Keith was the right fit for this. Even Francis couldn't hide his small smile, even as he rolled his eyes like it was no big deal. Mom squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with happiness for both of us. Keith's grip on his napkin tightened. He was actually processing this was real. He stood up, his voice finally steady enough to say he wouldn't let us down. My charm bracelet glinted on my wrist, a reminder of how far we'd come together. Dad stood up, clapped Keith on the shoulder, and told him this was just the beginning. In that moment, the whole room felt warm, like we were all part of something bigger. Keith's smile was brighter than any light in that room. This was his chance to shine. I knew in that second our story was just getting started, and it was going to be amazing. Our hands stayed locked under the table, a silent promise of all the adventures ahead. Dad raised his glass, and we all followed, cheering for Keith and for our future. Today was the day Keith started his internship at my family's company, and I was right by his side. The office buzzed with energy, and I could see how much this opportunity meant to him. Just then, Tim's assistant approached, ready to show Keith to his new desk. Keith walked beside her, his posture straight, with excitement I could barely contain. I stayed at the entrance, watching him disappear into the busy office. His hands were slightly shaky, but I knew he was ready for this challenge. Rows of desks filled with employees, everyone focused on their work. This was where Keith would prove himself. When he looked back at me, his heterochromatic eyes were shining like stars. I waved gently, trying to hide how proud I was of the man he'd become. He waved back, a wide, bright smile spreading across his face. The charm bracelet on my wrist glinted in the light, a reminder of how far we'd come. The assistant stopped at a sleek desk, pointing out the setup for Keith. On the desk sat folders of resumes, ready for Keith to dive into his work. Keith sat down, his posture instantly shifting to one of focused determination. I took one last look, then turned to leave, knowing this was just the start for him. His nameplate on the desk made it all feel real. He was finally here. I walked through the quiet hallway, my heart full of pride and a little sadness at leaving him. I placed a hand on my chest, feeling the warmth of our memories together. Stepping out into the morning air, I sent Keith a silent wish for success. Up in his office, Keith looked out the window, and I knew we were both ready for what came next. Keith's internship was supposed to bring us closer, but it only pushed us further apart. Our shared dreams felt distant as I stared at our childhood photo on the wall. The stuffed bunnies he gave me still sat linked, a reminder of our first real connection. My phone buzzed, and I held my breath, hoping he'd say he was on his way. But the text only confirmed my worst fear. He was working late again, canceling our plans. Sorry, have to work tonight. Those words felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I pulled my knees to my chest, wondering if we'd ever get our old nights back. I stroked the pink bunny's ear, remembering that rainy arcade night he won it for me. Our summer at the beach, our late-night study sessions. All felt like a distant memory now. A tear fell onto the bunny's paw, proof my heart was breaking, one missed night at a time. The fairy lights flickered around me, but they couldn't chase away the loneliness in my heart. I picked up the watch I made him, matching his heterochromatic eyes, wondering if he ever looked at it. For my Mr. Protagonist, I meant every word. But did he still feel the same? I pressed it to my chest, praying he'd feel my longing through our growing distance. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for a text that would never come. My screen went dark, and so did my hope. Maybe this was our new normal now. The craft supplies we used to make gifts together now sat neglected, gathering dust. In our photo, Keith was smiling that soft smile, the one he only saved for me. I hugged the pink bunny tight, trying to feel his warmth through the fabric. But it wasn't the same. I closed my eyes, wondering if tomorrow would bring any change, or if this was forever. I was so lonely lately, so I made Keith's favorite lunch to surprise him at work. His internship kept him busy, but I needed to see his smile again. I wandered through the busy offices, my heart beating a little faster with nervous excitement. There he was, focused on his work, looking so grown up in his office clothes. He looked up, and his whole face lit up when he saw me holding the lunchbox. He grabbed my hand and led me to the office rooftop, where we could be alone. The rooftop was quiet, with the whole city stretching out below us. We sat down on the ledge, and I pulled out all his favorite sandwiches and snacks. He took a bite, and his eyes widened. He loved my cooking, just like always. Then he started talking about his internship, about the projects he was working on, his voice full of passion. I watched him talk, and all my loneliness melted away. This was the Keith I knew and loved. He told me about everything he was learning, about how he wanted to make a difference with his work. I reached out and held his hand, so happy to be here with him, sharing this moment. He pulled out some papers, showing me the plans he'd been working on, so proud of what he'd done. We leaned close together, looking at the plans, and I knew we could face anything as long as we were together. I felt my eyes tear up a little, not from sadness, but from pure happiness. The wind blew my hair into my face, and Keith gently brushed it away, his touch so soft. Our hands stayed together, resting on the lunchbox, as we sat there, just enjoying being with each other. He passed me a cookie, his smile warm, and I took it, savoring every bite. In that quiet moment on the rooftop, I knew everything would be okay. We had each other. We ate until the lunchbox was empty, every bite filled with love and warmth. Keith leaned his head on my shoulder, tired but happy, and I held him close. I looked out at the city, my heart full, knowing we had a bright future ahead. We packed up the empty lunchbox, ready to head back to the busy office together. As we walked back down the stairs, our hands still intertwined, I felt like the luckiest girl in the world. That rainy night, the doorbell rang, and I had no idea my world was about to change. I swung the door open, and there he stood, soaked to the bone, clutching something to his chest. His hand shook from the cold as he held out a folder, his eyes burning with determination. My fingers brushed his, and I flinched at how cold he was. He'd been out in this rain for who knows how long. I pulled him inside quickly, my heart racing at the look in his eyes, like he was about to lay everything on the line. I led him to the living room, handing him a towel, and waited for him to speak, my mind racing with questions. He set down the towel and picked up the folder, his fingers tracing the words on the cover like he was touching his dream. He opened it up, and there were designs, blueprints for tech to help people with disabilities live easier lives. I stared at the designs, my mouth falling open. I never knew he'd been working on something so incredible. He talked for what felt like hours, explaining every detail, his voice growing more passionate with every word. He showed me the parts he'd worked on during his internship, how he'd learned to turn ideas into real plans. I leaned in, asking question after question, eager to know everything about this project he cared so much about. I looked into his eyes, those two different colors, and saw how much this meant to him, how he'd poured his soul into it. He stopped talking suddenly, and the room went quiet, like he was gathering the courage to say something huge. He reached for my hand, his own shaking a little, and I could feel how nervous he was, even through the fabric. "I want you to be my partner," he said, and my heart skipped a beat. I never expected this. I squeezed his hand back, tears in my eyes, because I knew this was where I was meant to be, right beside him. He pulled me into a hug, and I could feel how relieved he was, like he'd been carrying this weight alone for so long. We sat there, holding hands, with the plan between us, proof that our dreams were finally becoming real. As the rain kept falling outside, I knew this was just the start of our partnership, and of something so much bigger. I looked at the word partner on the page, and I knew whatever came next, we'd face it together. Today, I'm at the airport, watching Keith leave for New York to meet investors. My heart's already aching. Calvin's here too, trying to keep things light, but even he can't hide the sadness. Wait, what's he hiding behind his back? Looks like he's got a little surprise. Keith steps closer, his hands warm around mine, promising to call every single night. I hold him tight, trying to memorize the feel of his hug before he goes. Then Calvin holds up his sign, and I can't help but laugh through my tears. He's such a dork, but I'm glad he's here to make this a little easier. It's time for him to go. He walks toward the gate, but keeps turning back to wave. Each wave feels like a little piece of my heart leaving with him. I wave back, my throat tight, trying to keep my smile from fading. He steps through the gate, and for a second, I think he'll turn back one more time, but he doesn't. The gate closes behind him, and suddenly, the airport feels so empty. Calvin puts an arm around me, and I let myself lean into his shoulder, finally letting the tears fall. The airport's still busy, full of people with places to go, but all I can think about is Keith. I touch the charm bracelet on my wrist, remembering the day Keith gave it to me. Calvin notices, and he gives my shoulder a squeeze, silently telling me it'll be okay. We start walking toward the exit, each step feeling heavier than the last. Outside, I look up and see a plane taking off, heading toward New York. That's his plane. I watch it until it's just a tiny dot in the sky. Whispering a quiet, "Come home soon," Calvin hands me a tissue, and I take it, finally feeling a little better knowing he'll call tonight. 3 whole days. No calls, no texts from Keith. I stared at my phone, heart in my throat. I paced my room until my legs ached, replaying his last message on repeat. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped, but it was never him. I pulled back the curtains, staring at the empty streets. Why wasn't he calling? My room felt so empty without his voice. I wondered if he'd forgotten about me. His last text was 3 days ago, landed in Noi. No update since. I buried my face in my pillow, trying to ignore the tightness in my chest. The clock ticked past midnight. Still no call. I felt tears burn my eyes. I unlocked my phone again, scrolling through our old messages like a lifeline. I leaned against my headboard, exhaustion weighing me down. Maybe he was just busy? My phone buzzed. My heart soared until I saw it was just spam. My eyes stung from staring at the screen. I was so tired, but I couldn't sleep. It was 1:30 a.m. I was half asleep when my phone rang again. I jolted awake, fumbling for my phone. My hands were shaking. The screen lit up with his name, Keith. I answered before the second ring. Keith? My voice cracked. I could barely speak through my relief. I told him how much I missed him, how worried I'd been. He apologized, his voice tired but warm. He'd been swamped with meetings and pitches. We talked for hours, catching up, saying all the things we'd missed. It was 2:15 a.m. when we finally hung up. My heart felt full again. I curled up in bed, a smile on my face. Everything was okay. I fell asleep, knowing he was thinking of me too. The wait was worth it. I couldn't shake this empty feeling. Keith was still in New York, and I missed him more than words could say. I'd texted Candace, my closest friend, to meet me here. I needed someone to talk to. I told her I was scared the distance would push us apart, that he'd forget about me. I twisted the charm bracelet he'd made me, the one that was supposed to remind me he cared. Candace didn't rush to speak. She just sat there, letting me get all my fears out. Then she smiled that warm smile of hers and told me she knew exactly how I felt. She pulled out her phone, showing me photos of her boyfriend who's studying abroad in London. She told me they set a fixed time to call every week, no matter how busy they were. And they sent each other small gifts, little reminders that they were thinking of each other. I hadn't thought about that. Small things, not grand gestures, could keep us connected. I picked up my phone, my finger hovering over Keith's name. Maybe I could send him a little surprise. Candace squeezed my hand, nodding like she knew exactly what I was thinking. Trust him, she said. And trust yourself. For the first time in days, I felt a little lighter. Maybe this distance wouldn't break us after all. The sun started to set, painting the sky in warm oranges and pinks. We sat there, just enjoying the quiet for a while. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Keith, short but sweet. Missing you more than anything. And I smiled through the tiny tears that formed, typing back a reply that told him I missed him too. Candace packed up her books, and we walked back toward the campus together, my heart feeling so much lighter. As I walked, I twisted the charm bracelet again. This time, it didn't make me sad, it made me hopeful. Maybe long distance wasn't the end of the world. Maybe it was just another part of our story to face together. I already had an idea for a small gift to send Keith. Something to let him know I was right here, thinking of him. I knew things would be okay. Because love, real love, could survive anything, even miles between us. I stared at the package from New York, my heart thudding with sudden excitement. After weeks of lonely nights, this was the sign I'd been waiting for. The postmark from New York felt like a direct piece of Keith's world. I couldn't tear my eyes away, my fingers trembling as I reached for it. Carefully, I peeled back the packaging, holding my breath the whole time. The deep blue velvet box peeked through, making my stomach flutter with anticipation. And there it was, a necklace shaped like the New York skyline, just like he'd described. I ran my finger over the tiny skyline charm, imagining Keith buying it for me. Beneath the necklace lay a handwritten letter, his messy handwriting instantly recognizable. His words poured off the page, telling me how much he missed our late-night talks. I fumbled for my phone, desperate to hear his voice right this second. My thumb hovered over his contact photo before I finally pressed call. Each ring felt like an eternity, my knee bouncing with nervous energy. When he answered, I could barely get the words out through my smile. We talked for hours, catching up on every little detail we'd missed. I told him how much I loved the necklace, how it made him feel closer. He described the skyline from his hotel window, making me wish I was there with him. We promised a video call every night, no matter how busy we were. I clipped the necklace around my neck, touching the charm like it was a piece of him. Every time I looked down, I'd be reminded of how much we meant to each other. I curled up with my pink stuffed bunny, finally feeling at peace after weeks of longing. Those magnet-connected bunnies were more than just gifts, they were our promise. Distance couldn't break us. If anything, it only made our love stronger. I was buried in my thesis at the library, trying not to drown in how much I missed Keith. Days without him felt like an eternity, every minute stretching on far too long. A guy from my business class suddenly appeared, a hopeful look on his face. He held out an invitation to a business conference, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. My heart skipped a beat, not from excitement, but from the need to make something perfectly clear. I took a deep breath, looking him straight in the eye with unshakable resolve. I told him I already had a boyfriend, one I was patiently waiting for to come home to me. He nodded slowly, a look of understanding crossing his face right away. He walked away quietly, no hard feelings, just acceptance in his step. I felt my chest warm up, more sure than ever of my feelings for Keith. I went back to my thesis, but my mind was flooded with nothing but thoughts of him. I thought about our garden, where we'd shared so many sweet, quiet moments. I even doodled a little drawing of us holding hands right there in that garden. A soft smile spread across my face, daydreaming about our perfect future together. The sunlight streamed through the window, as if it was cheering me on too. I saw other couples laughing together, and it only made me miss Keith even more. I checked my phone again, still waiting for a message or call from him. But I didn't mind the wait. Our love was worth every single second apart. I packed up my things, ready to go home and wait for Keith there. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I knew our story was only just beginning. The charm bracelet Keith made me glinted in the sun, a perfect reminder of his love. I couldn't stop smiling. already counting the days until he'd be home with me. I thought about having our wedding right here, surrounded by everything we loved. Nothing could make me doubt us now. Our love was stronger than anything. The whispers started again in the cafeteria. This time, they said I was lonely, looking for someone new. I could feel eyes on me, every whisper cutting like a tiny knife that wouldn't stop twisting. Hansel heard it first. His face burned red, fury blazing in his dark eyes. He slammed his fist on the table so hard our trays rattled, ready to storm off. But I grabbed his arm, my fingers tightening before he could make a bigger scene. I shook my head, my voice steady even though my chest felt tight. "Why are you stopping me?" he snapped, his voice loud enough to draw more stares. The whispers got louder, like they were waiting for us to fight, to give them more to talk about. "Because it doesn't matter what they say," I told him, keeping my voice calm. "Keith knows me. He knows none of this is true, and that's all that matters." Hansel stared at me, his fury fading into frustration. He knew I was right. He sat back down with a huff, the chair scraping against the linoleum floor. I placed my hand on his arm, a small, grateful smile on my face. The whispers died down, just like I knew they would. Rumors never last long. Then my phone buzzed. Keith's name lit up the screen, and my chest felt warm again. I picked it up, ignoring the last few lingering stares, my fingers hovering over the screen. Hansel rolled his eyes, but I saw the small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The sun streamed through the cafeteria windows, turning the dust in the air into tiny golden stars. I knew then, no matter what people said, Keith and I would get through this together. The cafeteria went back to normal, and for the first time all day, I could breathe easy. I was buried in my thesis when I saw him, Keith, standing at the library entrance, dead serious. The whole library went quiet instantly. Every single person was staring at him. That guy who spread rumors about me, his face went as white as a sheet. He walked over with such intensity, his shoes clicking loudly on the floor. Then he said it loud and clear for everyone to hear. "Rianne is my girlfriend." My hand tightened around my pen so hard my knuckles turned white. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He stared down at that rumor spreader, his eyes sharp enough to cut glass. The guy just stared at his shoes, too scared to look Keith in the eye. Then he turned to look at me, his whole expression softening in an instant. My eyes went wide, and I could feel tears welling up. What was he going to do next? He walked toward me, his steps slower now, like he was savoring every moment. The whole library seemed to hold its breath as he stopped right in front of me. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. He dropped down to one knee, looking up at me with the softest smile I'd ever seen. When he opened the box, I saw it a simple, beautiful diamond ring. My lips started to tremble, and tears finally spilled down my cheeks. "Rianne Cartel," he said, "will you marry me?" I stood up, covering my mouth, and nodded so hard my head hurt. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly, like it was made just for me. The whole library erupted in cheers. Everyone was clapping and shouting for us. He pulled me into a tight hug, and I buried my face in his shoulder, crying happy tears. Everyone was pulling out their phones, capturing this moment we'd never forget. I froze, my hand flying to my mouth, as Keith knelt before me in the library. The library fell silent for a heartbeat, then erupted into cheers I could barely hear over my own racing heart. In his trembling hand, the velvet box glinted, holding the ring I'd secretly dreamed of for years. His fingers brushed mine as he slipped the ring on, cool metal against my warm skin, a promise made tangible. I leaned into his arms, tears streaming down my face, as the library's cheers wrapped around us like a blanket. Through my tears, I could see Keith's face, bright with a smile I'd never seen so wide and genuine. Every student in the library was on their feet, clapping and cheering for two people who'd waited so long for this moment. At the library entrance, my father stood with a soft smile, his eyes glistening with pride. Even Francis, who'd always been so protective, had a tiny smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Keith leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead, his touch warm and steady, like he'd never let me go. The ring on my finger caught the light, a tiny spark that felt like the start of everything we'd ever wanted. We held hands, squeezing tightly, as our friends and classmates surrounded us, shouting congratulations. Candace was jumping up and down, her eyes bright with tears of happiness for us. Hansel clapped Keith on the back, cheering louder than anyone else, proud of his best friend. From the door, my family watched us, knowing this was the moment we'd been working toward for so long. I looked into Keith's heterochromatic eyes, and I knew I'd love him forever. This was just the beginning. Sunlight streamed through the library windows, dust dancing in the beams, making the moment feel like a dream come true. As the cheers continued, I realized this wasn't just a proposal. It was the start of our life together. I could feel his heartbeat under my hand, steady and strong, matching the rhythm of my own. Slowly, the cheers died down, and students returned to their studies, but we stayed right where we were. The velvet box lay forgotten on the floor, its job done, having brought us the future we'd always wanted. We just looked at each other, smiling through our tears, knowing no words were needed in that perfect moment. Hand in hand with Keith, we stepped toward the library entrance, my heart still racing from his proposal. There stood Tim, his face split into a warm grin, like he'd been waiting for this moment. He chuckled, saying he'd known Keith would propose to me long before we did. Tim clapped Keith on the back, teasing us about how long it took him to finally ask. As we laughed, I spotted Francis standing nearby, his usual grumpy scowl still in place. I tensed up, expecting him to make some snarky comment about us being sappy, but instead, he stepped forward, his expression softer than I'd ever seen it before. He held out his hand, and for a second, I didn't know what to do. Then he wrapped his hand around mine, his grip firm and steady, not at all like his usual self. He said he'd always be there for me, no matter what, even if he still thought Keith was a total brat. Tears welled up in my eyes. I'd never heard Francis say something so genuine and warm. I squeezed his hand back, my throat tight with all the emotions I couldn't put into words. His ears turned bright pink, and he grumbled about not being this sappy on purpose. I didn't let him keep hiding behind his tough act. I threw my arms around him, hugging him tight. He stiffened at first, like he didn't know how to react, then slowly hugged me back, his arms awkward around my shoulders. I could see Keith smiling from the corner of my eye, his eyes filled with pride and love for me. Tim clapped his hands and laughed, clearly happy to see us all getting along. I buried my face in Francis's shoulder, letting the happy tears finally fall freely. He patted my back awkwardly, muttering about me getting his suit all wet with my tears. As we pulled apart, a few students glanced over, but I didn't care. This moment was ours, and it felt perfect. For the first time, I truly felt like we were all family, ready to face whatever came next together. Hand in hand with Keith, I knew this was just the start of our beautiful, messy, perfect future. My heart raced when Keith's parents walked through the door. Today was the big Meet the Family day. Carmi immediately went into host mode, grinning like she'd been waiting for this for years. I tried to stay calm, but I kept replaying all the worst-case scenarios in my head. Then Keith's mom started talking, and what she said made my face burn. She said Keith had liked me since we were 10 years old. 10. I had no idea. Keith's face turned bright red, and he tried to hide behind his cup. Total chaos. The whole room erupted in laughter. Even Francis, who usually looked like he'd never smiled, cracked a grin. Just when I thought the chaos was over, Keith's dad cleared his throat. Everyone went quiet. He pulled out a folder, and my heart jumped. Was this some kind of test? But it wasn't a test. He said he wanted to give us the family's old commercial property. My eyes went wide. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was huge. Keith stood up, his voice shaking as he thanked his dad. I was so proud of him. The room filled with applause, and I squeezed Keith's hand. This was better than any dream I'd had. I looked at Keith, and I knew this was just the start of our real adventure. Carmi kept refilling our cups, her smile bigger than I'd ever seen it. Keith's mom pulled me aside, whispering that she'd known this day would come for years. For the first time all day, I let myself relax. Everything was going perfect. I took a bite of cookie, savoring the sweet taste. Today was a day I'd never forget. When Keith's dad clapped him on the shoulder, I saw the pride in his eyes. Keith had come so far. As the fire crackled, I knew our family story was just beginning, and it was going to be amazing. I'll never forget the night Keith's dad changed our lives forever in our living room. The warm glow of the fireplace made everything feel so intimate and special. When he stood up, holding that old document, we had no idea what was coming. Keith's eyes went wide the second he realized what the paper was for his startup. His dad said he'd been impressed by Keith's accessible tech business plan for months. He said the property was a perfect startup office for helping people with disabilities. I felt so proud of him, seeing how his hard work was finally paying off. The property was a family legacy, passed down through generations of ancestors. Keith was speechless, his face flushed with pure excitement and gratitude. He held the document like it was the most precious thing he'd ever owned. After a moment, he finally found his voice, stammering out a grateful thank you. I squeezed his hand, silently sharing every bit of his joy and pride. His dad just smiled and said he knew Keith would do great things with the space. It felt like all of Keith's late nights and hard work had finally led to this moment. I never thought a simple family night would change our future so completely. I couldn't hold back my tears of pride for the man I loved so much. Keith hugged his dad tightly, both of them overwhelmed with emotion. The fireplace flames crackled softly, adding to the warm, emotional atmosphere. I walked over and hugged Keith, whispering how proud I was of his achievement. In that moment, I knew our life together was about to get so much more exciting. Keith held the document close to his chest, like it was his most valued treasure. I froze when the wedding planners flooded our dining room, binders of plans piling up everywhere. My eyes darted from one binder to another, dresses, venues, cakes, all screaming for attention. My hands started shaking. I had no idea where to even begin with all these choices. Then I felt a warm hand wrap around mine. Keith, finally noticing how overwhelmed I was, he squeezed my hand gently, saying we didn't have to rush. We could take this one step at a time. Wedding gowns in every style imaginable stared back at me, each more breathtaking than the last. I felt my breath catch. How could I pick just one when everything felt so perfect? Keith's thumb brushed over my knuckles, a silent reminder that we were in this together. Mom walked over, her eyes sparkling, pointing out a lace gown she thought would suit me. Dad leaned against the doorway, a small smile on his face, clearly enjoying the chaos. Francis just rolled his eyes, muttering that we were making too big a fuss over a single day. Binders were organized by category: flowers, catering, music, each section more detailed than the last. I looked up at Keith, suddenly feeling a little calmer with him by my side. He gave me that soft smile of his, the one that always made everything feel okay. The room was filled with chatter and laughter, but all I could focus on was the warmth of Keith's hand in mine. Even the flower arrangements were planned down to the last petal, and they were all paper for my allergies. I ran my finger over a picture of paper roses, grateful Keith had thought of my allergy from the start. Keith picked up a binder full of venue ideas, pointing out a garden setting we'd talked about before. We leaned in together, flipping through the pages, our voices soft as we discussed our options. Mom and Dad watched us, their faces full of love and pride, clearly happy we were taking our time. The wedding planner made notes in the margin, ensuring every detail was captured for us. Our formal dining table, usually filled with china, was now covered in binders and papers. Our hands rested on top of a binder, a quiet promise that we'd figure this out together. The warm glow of the chandeliers made everything feel cozy, even with all the chaos of planning. For the first time all afternoon, I felt a little excited instead of overwhelmed. I dragged Keith away from the chaos, hiding in my family's garden, finally able to breathe. After all that wedding planner chaos, I needed something real, something ours. He just followed, his eyes soft, like he'd go anywhere, as long as it was with me. We sank onto the old wooden bench, the same one where we'd shared so many quiet moments before. I took a deep breath, ready to tell him what I really wanted for our wedding. I don't want a big fancy venue with strangers staring at us, Keith. I want it here, in this garden, with only the people we love. His eyes widened for a second, then that familiar soft smile spread across his face. Anywhere with you is perfect, Rianne. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I couldn't stop smiling. He got it. He really got it. He pulled me into a hug, and for a moment, all the stress from the week melted away. We walked through the garden, pointing out which flowers we'd use for our paper bouquets, just like the charm on my bracelet, I said, remembering the gift he'd made me. He brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, his touch soft, like he was handling something precious. My charm bracelet glinted in the sun, a reminder of all the little ways he'd loved me over the years. I could almost see it, our family and friends gathered, laughing, paper bouquets in every hand. We'd have my mom's famous cookies, and Francis would probably roll his eyes but secretly be happy. Keith pulled out his phone, ready to call my mom and tell her our decision. Wait, I said, holding his hand down. Let's just enjoy this quiet for a little longer. We sat in silence as the sun set, knowing that this was just the beginning of our perfect future. I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling completely at peace, finally sure of what we wanted. Our hands stayed intertwined, a silent promise that we'd always be each other's safe place. The wedding was days away, then the call came. Dad had a heart attack. We dropped everything, racing to the hospital as fear coiled in my chest. The hospital halls blurred past, every second feeling like an eternity. I could barely breathe, my mind screaming that nothing could happen to Dad. We huddled in the waiting room, the silence heavier than any noise. My hands shook so bad I could barely hold Keith's. Keith held me tight, his quiet voice the only anchor I had. Mom cried silently, Francis's jaw tight with unspoken fear. The monitor's beat felt like a countdown, each sound a stab to the heart. I buried my face in Keith's chest, praying for any good news. Then we heard footsteps. Our doctor finally emerged. Time seemed to stop as he looked at each of us, one by one. For a split second, I thought the worst had happened. But then he smiled, a small, gentle smile that made my knees weak. It was just a mild heart attack, he said. Dad just needed rest. Tears flooded my face, relief so strong it hurt to breathe. The whole room exhaled, the weight of the world lifting off our shoulders. Francis clapped Keith on the back, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Mom thanked the doctor over and over, her voice trembling with joy. In that moment, I realized family was all that truly mattered. Our wedding could wait. Dad's health was everything. As the doctor left, we all sat in quiet, grateful silence. Sunlight filtered through the window, a gentle reminder of hope. Soon, we'd get to see Dad and make sure he was okay. And whatever came next, we'd face it together as a family. I never dreamed my wedding would unfold in a quiet hospital chapel, life's full of surprises. When Dad said he refused to miss our big day, we didn't hesitate to agree. It all started in Dad's hospital room, his words filled with love and urgency. 3 days flew by as we rushed to prepare for our intimate ceremony. Our closest family and friends filled the small space, making it feel like the whole world. My bouquet was made of paper flowers, perfect for my pollen allergy. So thoughtful. Calvin showed up in his doctor's coat, ready to tease us and celebrate. Even Francis softened, his usually stern face showing a hint of warmth. Mom was emotional, tears in her eyes as she watched us begin our journey. My charm bracelet felt extra special that day, a reminder of how far we've come. Dad sat proudly in his wheelchair, his eyes shining with pride and love. Walking down the small aisle with Keith felt like walking into our perfect future. Candace was beaming, happy to see her best friend finally find her happiness. Hansel couldn't contain his excitement, cheering louder than anyone else. Standing there with Keith, I knew this was exactly where I was meant to be. Keith's heterochromatic eyes held so much love, I felt it deep in my soul. The minister led our small ceremony, his words warm and heartfelt. When we exchanged rings, I knew our love was officially sealed forever. Our cheers filled the small chapel, love, joy, and family wrapped around us. Our first kiss as husband and wife felt like a dream come true. Dad pulled us close, his words of pride making tears fill our eyes. Even Francis offered his quiet approval, a rare and precious gift. Mom held me tight, her tears of joy mixing with mine. We took photos outside, capturing this perfect, imperfect moment forever. Keith still wore the watch I made him, a constant reminder of our love story. Just married and taking photos in the chapel, I never expected what happened next. Family and friends were all there, capturing every happy moment of our big day. Then I heard a gasp from the entrance, and there he was. Someone I thought I'd never see again. It was Andrew, my best friend from childhood, who moved abroad years ago. I froze, my heart racing. How could he be here, at my wedding? Then I looked at Keith, and his grin told me everything. This was his surprise for me. He walked straight to me, arms open, and all the years apart melted away in an instant. I hugged him tightly, tears streaming down my face. I'd missed him so much. Everyone around us cheered, sharing in my joy at this unexpected reunion. He'd flown all the way from New York just to surprise me on my wedding day. Keith and Andrew shook hands. Turns out they'd been planning the surprise for months. He showed me photos of his life abroad, and we caught up like no time had passed. Then, Carmi suggested a group photo, and everyone gathered in the center of the chapel. We lined up, me between Keith and Andrew, ready to capture this perfect moment. Everyone smiled, some making silly faces, as Hansel got ready to take the shot. The flash went off, freezing this once-in-a-lifetime moment forever. After the photo, everyone hugged and greeted Andrew, welcoming him back to our little circle. We still wore our friendship bracelets, a reminder of the kids we used to be. The chapel doors opened, flooding us with sunlight as we laughed and shared stories. In that moment, I knew this wedding day had become even more perfect than I ever imagined. Calvin handed Andrew a glass of champagne, and they toasted to old times and new beginnings. Carmi watched us with a warm smile. She'd always loved Andrew like her own son. Even Francis, who's always serious, shook his hand with a small smile. I spotted the rabbit keychain in his suitcase, something I'd made him when we were 10. I pointed to it, and he laughed, remembering the day I gave it to him. We sat in a circle, and Andrew told us all about his adventures abroad, making everyone laugh. Hansel showed me the photo of our hug. It captured every bit of the joy in that moment. We stood by the stained glass, saying how much things had changed, yet stayed the same. Keith clapped him on the shoulder, and it felt like they'd been friends for years, too. As the sun set, the stained glass painted us in rainbow colors, making the moment even more magical. After all the chaos, we came home to the warmest surprise from Carmi. She'd transformed our backyard into a cozy little reception just for us. The table was loaded with all our favorite treats, still warm at the oven. I could barely hold back my smile, my heart full of warmth. Everyone gathered around, ready to laugh and celebrate together. Andrew, back from London, had so many wild stories to share. He told us about his chaotic adventures in London's underground pubs. I laughed so hard my sides hurt, forgetting all our worries for a moment. Even Francis couldn't stay serious. He had to join in on the fun. Then he started on my childhood embarrassing stories. Oh, the humiliation. I pretended to be mad, but I was secretly loving every second of it. The garden was filled with laughter, the happiest sound I'd heard in weeks. Keith squeezed my hand, his eyes soft with love as he listened. Dad raised his glass, proposing a toast to our future together. Clink! The sound of our cheers echoed from the garden. Andrew pulled out all the souvenirs he'd brought back from his trip. I loved that little bus model. It was just so him. As the sun set, we wandered around the garden, just enjoying each other's company. The paper flowers glowed in the sunset, a perfect touch from Mom. In that moment, I knew this was what happiness truly felt like. Mom even brought out our favorite desserts, going all out for us. Keith fed me a bite of cake, his eyes crinkling with joy. Francis and Andrew started teasing each other, the tension long gone. I caught Dad watching us, his eyes shiny with pride and joy. As night fell, the fairy lights came on, making the garden feel magical. I never expected this moment. Dad was about to hand over the family business we'd grown up with. The whole family gathered in our sun-dappled garden, every breath holding quiet anticipation. Keith's jaw tightened. He knew this wasn't just a title. It was a weight he'd carry carefully. Dad stepped forward, crisp papers in hand, his voice steady as he prepared to speak his decision. He'd watched us grow from kids to adults, and now he saw something in two of us that we hadn't fully seen. I'm handing over partial control of Cartel Corp to two people, Dad announced, and my breath caught. Francis stood rigid, his usual sharp expression softening into quiet shock at the news. Keith's fingers curled slightly at his sides. You could see he was processing the gravity of this moment. Dad spoke of Francis's unwavering responsibility, how he'd always put the company first, no matter what. Then he turned to Keith, praising his sharp mind and fresh perspective that had already helped the company thrive. I felt my heart swell with pride. I knew how hard both of them had worked for this. Mom stood off to the side, tears in her eyes, clearly proud of the men we'd all become. Dad placed a hand on Francis's shoulder, a silent gesture of trust that spoke louder than words. Keith met Dad's gaze straight on. No longer the quiet kid we'd grown up with. He was a leader now. Francis stepped forward first, his voice firm and steady as he made his promise. I won't let you down, he said, every word weighted with the responsibility he was about to take on. Dad nodded, clearly satisfied that his oldest son was ready to take on this challenge. Then it was Keith's turn. He took a deep breath, his voice steady but full of emotion. I'll honor this trust, he said, his knuckles white from how tightly he was gripping his fist. Dad smiled, clearly impressed by the conviction in Keith's voice. In that moment, I knew our family was entering a new chapter, one full of new challenges and new successes. I walked over to Keith, placing a hand on his arm to let him know I was there, no matter what came next. He covered my hand with his touch warm and reassuring, silently thanking me for my support. As the sun began to set over the garden, I felt a deep sense of peace. Our family was exactly where it needed to be. Dad stood back, watching all of us, and I could tell he was more proud than he'd ever been. I had no idea what Keith was about to reveal in our favorite garden spot. The air smelled of blooming roses, but my attention was fixed on the folder in his hands. It wasn't just another school project. This was his fully realized life's work. He'd spent months perfecting every detail of this accessible tech business plan. Then he dropped the bombshell. Uncle Tim was investing in his vision. My heart skipped a beat. This was bigger than anything we'd ever dreamed of. He talked about creating tech that would change lives for people with disabilities. Every chart, every survey showed how much thought he'd poured into this. I could feel the passion in every line, every word he'd written himself. Then he looked at me, and I knew exactly what he was going to ask. He wanted me to join him not just as his partner, but as his creative co-founder. I'd always dreamed of working with him, but never on something this meaningful. My voice shook as I told him yes, I'd be right there beside him. I threw my arms around him, unable to hold back my excitement and joy. The sun seemed to shine even brighter, celebrating this new chapter of our lives. He whispered how much he needed me, how this wouldn't work without my creativity. When we pulled back, his eyes were full of tears and proud joy. Our hands clasped over the plan, ready to take on the world together. He held up the plan to the sun, like we were already celebrating our success. That garden conversation didn't just start a business, it started our future. Uncle Tim's signature was already there, making this dream officially real. He'd left pages blank just for my ideas, knowing how much I loved creating. I wrote down my first idea, feeling like we were already changing the world. I was sitting in our family garden, never guessing another big surprise was on the way. We were just having a lazy afternoon together, no clue what Mom was about to reveal. Then Mom stood up, her hands shaking as she held out a small white stick. It was a pregnancy test, bright red positive lines staring back at all of us. The news hit us hard. Dad was over the moon. Even Francis looked shocked for once. Dad couldn't hide his joy. He was already talking about being a dad again. Francis tried to act annoyed, saying he was too old to be a big brother again. But that tiny smile on his face gave him away. He was just as happy as the rest of us. I placed my hand on my own belly, and Keith instantly covered his hand over mine. He looked at me with such warmth, like he already knew what I was thinking. Mom was teary-eyed, laughing as she talked about the new baby. Dad pulled Mom into a tight hug, and we all stood there, wrapped in warmth. I thought about our own baby, about the future we were building together. I couldn't help but imagine what our little family would look like soon. The sun was setting, painting the garden in golden light, and everything felt perfect. Keith's heterochromatic eyes locked with mine, and I knew he understood everything. We sat there, hands intertwined over my belly, silent but completely connected. The pregnancy test lay on the grass, a small symbol of our family's new joy. Laughter filled the garden, and for a moment, nothing else in the world mattered. I knew exactly what I wanted to do next, something to make our family even more whole. Even Francis went over to Mom, clapping her shoulder like he didn't care at all. But his eyes told the truth. He was just as excited as everyone else. As we walked back to the house, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky pink. Keith and I walked hand in hand, already dreaming of our growing family. The warm light from the house wrapped around us, and I knew this was just the beginning. Last night, Keith pulled me to our garden after dinner. My heart flipped instantly. He was so mysterious, acting like he had something huge to tell me. I kept guessing, was it a gift? A surprise trip? I had no clue. My hands shook as I walked toward him. I could barely breathe. The garden looked like a fairy tale, but I was too nervous to enjoy it. Then he opened the box, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a tiny baby carriage necklace. I had no idea what it meant until he spoke. His voice shook as he said he wanted to start a family with me. Tears poured down my face. I'd been waiting for this for so long. I nodded so hard my head hurt. I told him I wanted the same more than anything. He pulled me into his arms, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. He fastened the necklace around my neck, his fingers brushing my skin gently. It felt perfect, like it was meant to be there all along. We sat on our favorite bench, watching the stars, and I knew this was just the start. I thought I was the happiest person alive until he whispered something else. He said he'd been planning this for months, ever since our wedding night. He showed me a notebook full of baby names and nursery ideas. I cried all over again. He'd even researched hypoallergenic baby products, just for me. I kissed his cheek, knowing I'd never love anyone as much as I love him. That night, we made a promise, one we'd keep for the rest of our lives. I kept touching the necklace, still in shock that this was real. He smiled like he could read my mind, and told me he loved me more than anything. The roses we planted together were in full bloom, like they were celebrating with us. We walked through the garden, talking about all the things we'd do with our baby. I felt so light, like I was walking on air. Everything felt perfect. I held the test in my shaking hands, heart hammering so hard I could barely breathe. The bathroom felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath right along with me. Two pink lines stared back at me. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I turned, and there he was, Keith, standing in the doorway, already reading the news in my face. Before I could speak, he was pulling me into his arms, his laugh warm against my hair. His hand found my stomach, and his voice was soft, disbelieving. "We're having a baby?" We ran down the stairs, our fingers laced together, ready to shout our news to the whole family. Mom was in the kitchen, and when she saw our faces, she dropped her spatula. Her eyes filled with tears before she could even speak, and she pulled us both into a tight hug. Dad walked in, confused by the commotion, and his whole face softened when we told him. He clapped Keith on the back, voice thick. "Welcome to the family in a whole new way, son." Francis showed up, pretending to be gruff, but I saw the smile he tried to hide. He ruffled my hair, muttering, "Don't be a complete mess, kid," but his touch was gentle. Calvin burst in, yelling so loud the plates rattled, and lifted Keith off the ground in a hug. Candace, book in hand, and her face lit up brighter than anyone else. She squeezed my hand, tears in her eyes. "I'm so happy for you guys. You deserve this." Hansel barreled in, whooping, and high-fived Calvin like they'd just won the lottery. We gathered around the table, laughing and crying, and for a moment everything felt perfect. Keith laced his fingers through mine, whispering, "Our little family is just getting started." In that moment, I knew no matter what came next, we'd face it together, as a family. I stood beside Keith, hand on my belly, when his phone rang with a life-changing call. I had no clue the caller was a famous entrepreneur, ready to invest in Keith's dream. His face went from focused to stunned. You could have heard a pin drop in that office. He didn't say a word, but his white-knuckled grip told me this was huge. Seconds felt like hours as he processed what he'd just heard. Then he looked up, his eyes shining like I'd never seen before. "We got it," he said. "A major investor is backing our accessible tech project." The office froze for a split second, then chaos erupted. Cheers exploded, desks were banged, and I swear, the walls shook with excitement. I made my way to him, my heart swelling with more pride than I could put into words. He pulled me close, his hand resting gently on my bum, and whispered, "We did it. We did it." Surrounded by cheering colleagues, I realized our dreams were finally taking flight. Everyone was buzzing, talking about what this meant for our little startup. I thought about our late nights, our doubts, and how far we'd come from that rainy arcade date. Keith went around high-fiving everyone, his joy contagious to every single person in the room. He came back to me, lacing our fingers together, and I knew this was just the beginning. His phone buzzed again, another message from the investor, already planning next steps. Slowly, everyone settled back to work, but with a new fire in their eyes. We walked to the window, looking out at the city, and dreamed about all the lives we'd change. In that moment, I knew we weren't just building a company, we were building our future together. Keith looked at me, his heterochromatic eyes soft, and I knew he felt it too. The office was filled with sunshine and purpose, and I couldn't wait to see what came next. After all these years, we finally have our own perfect home. Warm, cozy, and every corner feels like it was made for us. And look at this backyard, perfect for our future little one. Every room feels like a dream I never wanted to wake from. Keith even brought our first couple gift, those linked bunnies. A reminder of how far we've come from that rainy arcade day. Then the doorbell rang. Keith's parents were here with a surprise. It was the family rocking chair, passed down for generations. I was so touched I could barely find the words to speak. I hugged them tightly, grateful for all their love and warmth. We placed it in the corner, ready for our baby to arrive. It held so many old stories, and now it would hold ours too. My parents joined us too, bringing all our favorite homemade dishes. The dining table was filled with love and all our favorite flavors. I placed my hand on my belly, feeling our baby's tiny, gentle presence. Keith squeezed my hand, his eyes full of endless love and hope. We raised our glasses, cheers to our new home, to our future, a toast to all the beautiful moments yet to come. Laughter filled the room, turning our new house into a true home. In that moment, I knew we had everything we ever needed. This was only the beginning of our beautiful forever. 9 months later, our little miracle finally arrived, tying our story into a perfect moment. Every corner of this nursery held the love we'd built, one small moment at a time. That pink bunny, once soaked in rain, now guarded our baby's dreams every night. I held her close, her tiny body fitting perfectly, like she was always meant to be here. Keith joined me, steady and warm, just like he'd been through every twist of our story. Her eyes were a perfect copy of Keith's, one brown, one green, a piece of him in every breath. I traced her soft cheek, marveling at how she carried every part of the man I loved. Our hands wrapped around hers, a silent promise of lifelong love and protection. Keith kissed her forehead, whispering how she was the best thing he'd ever created. As I looked at our little family, I saw our entire story flash before my eyes. Those magnetic paws, once a silly date gift, now symbolized our unbreakable bond. We locked eyes, and all the late nights and long distances felt worth it in that second. The bracelet Keith made me, still on my wrist, a reminder of his endless thoughtfulness. He stared at her like she was his entire world, and in that moment, she was ours too. Mom stood in the doorway, tears in her eyes, watching the love we'd built. She'd always believed in us, and now she got to see our dream come true. Francis tried to hide his smile, but we all saw how proud he truly was. That old rocking chair, a family heirloom, now held our newest generation. I rocked her gently, listening to her soft breaths, and felt truly complete for the first time. In that warm room, surrounded by love, I realized this wasn't the end. It was just our beginning. Her tiny hand wrapped around mine, promising all the adventures we'd share together. This nursery, once just a room, now held the heart of our forever growing story.